My next guest endured some terrifying health issues for many years, frightening, unexplained blackouts. 30 years this was going on for before finally being diagnosed with a condition called autonomic dysfunction. I hope I've said that right. And POTS, P-O-T-S.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Morning.
This is Gina Dello from Grantham. It sounds horrific, Gina. What was happening here?
It's pretty hideous in a sense. POTS, or Postural Tachycardia Syndrome. It's an autonomic dysfunction where you feel dizzy and faint, palpitations, fatigue, and it can knock you out basically at any given moment. So for 30 years, I'd be walking down the street and just pass out and didn't really know what was happening. And yeah.
So you'd be surrounded by a group of people saying, "You all right?"
Yeah, you come around to feet basically. That's all I can remember is feet. Just seeing people's feet. So yeah, you really didn't know what was going on. Medics didn't know what was going on. They don't really put heart monitors on you and things when you're quite young, to be honest. Whether they should do, I don't know. Whether I can't remember that, I'm not sure. But there wasn't really any diagnosis until 2009.
So that's a long time to wait before actually getting any kind of resolution. I mean, just not knowing actually what might be wrong must be hugely stressful.
Well, yeah, it has quite a big impact because often, and I think in my case as well, and this is quite often the case, it's misdiagnosed for psychological problems, things like panic attacks, depression. So mother has baby, has blackout. This happens quite a few times, must be postnatal depression. So ship her off to a psychologist and things like that. Now, that's fine in a sense that you learn a lot of life skills, but it doesn't actually sort out the root problem. And people get confused. They don't really understand what's going on because it doesn't sort it out in the long term. So, yeah, it's not the best scenario to be left in.
So when you finally got a diagnosis, tell me about that, because that must have been quite a revelation for you.
Yeah, it was really, in a sense. It's, just knowing makes a big difference. Informed choice is so huge. And it was down to a doctor in Grantham, actually, a cardiologist, who popped on heart monitors and noticed that when I stood up, my heart rate would beat. POTS patients, their heart rate pounds away at sort of 30 beats faster on standing than it was, or more. And so this tachycardia obviously deprives oxygen to the brain, and that's what knocks you out. So he saw this happen, and he also noticed that I had an issue with dropping blood pressure. So the two combined weren't really a very helpful scenario. And the other thing, of course, is I also sometimes had a very low heartbeat. It would go the other way with the bradycardia, so they kind of popped a pacemaker in to deal with that, which helped in that sense. But yeah, it leaves its mark.
So you still have these episodes?
Yeah, I do still have the episodes. For me, unfortunately, it's not made a massive sort of improvement that I can live a completely normal life.
So they haven't been able to give you drugs that deal with the problem?
No, I mean, they try lots of different things, but it is incredibly hard to control, and particularly in sort of more of a middle-aged person. I think there's more success in younger people. I came across a charity called STARS online, stars.org.uk, and they've been phenomenally helpful in signposting, basically. So they were good.
So this has changed your life. No question. It's had a big impact on your life, and so you're taking on a new challenge to raise funds for the charity, which has helped you and many other sufferers of this condition. And it's quite an interesting project, really, and I want to talk about that in just a couple of minutes' time. First of all, let's just see what's happening on the roads where you are. 24 minutes past 10, it's Rod White and keeping you company this Friday morning in the rain and the wind. So it's going to get quite interesting, the weather over the weekend. We'll check in on the forecast for you just before 11 o'clock. It's Jem Bartram today looking at the weather for us. Yeah, don't miss that, because I think it's going to be a lively old weekend. But we're back with Gina Dello from Grantham, who has been experiencing, health problems which have actually been quite terrifying, really. These unexplained blackouts, and as she says, she's got to know a lot about feet, as she's suddenly woken up to be surrounded by people all saying, "You all right?" And it must actually be very difficult, that. You must develop a little bit of anxiety around being out in public places.
Yeah, it's not great. You do tend to make sure that somebody knows where you're going, or go with somebody, or things like that. So, and you get to know your own system. Obviously, a lot of days I just stay in and have a fairly sedentary lifestyle. And if I do go out, then it's fingers crossed that I don't end up in A&E. So.
Is that generally what happens? They ship you off to A&E?
Yeah, because if you faint in public, they'll call the paramedics, and that's usually the first port of call, because I get an arrhythmia. So although I carry a batch of ECGs and goodness knows what else, and I'm sitting there saying, no, that's normal, it's, you feel pretty lousy, to be honest, so you do tend to need to go in and then come out again. But so it's being responsible, really, as well.
Yeah, well, you've lived with this for 30 years. But now you've come up with an idea to help repay, really, the people who've helped you through this. So tell us about that. OK, well, it's a poetry challenge. And I've written poetry all my life. I'm not saying it's brilliant poetry. It's just ditties and observations. And it's basically to write a poem a day for a year, which is pushing anybody, I think, but it's quite fun as well. So it's one poem a day for a year on www.Ginz&Tonic.com, raising awareness for the condition, for the charity that have helped, and covering a whole plethora of subjects. Okay, I'm just typing in the website now. We can have a look at it. What sort of things do you create poetry around? What sort of things do you do? Give us some examples.
It can be absolutely anything. Today it's a poem on the charity and the stars. Yesterday it's What's in a Name, because of the christening the day before. Prince George's christening. It could be something like, there's a poem called Inspiration that was popular, but the one thing that's actually surprised me that's been really, really popular is when I kind of ramble off into some fictional land of fairies and goblins and things that really are throwbacks to childhood, and people seem to really, really like being taken away into wonderlands.
I used to think that stars just twinkled in the sky as burning balls of lights above me way up high, or maybe famous folk who walked the red carpet with fabulous high heels and chihuahuas for their pets. But now closer to my heart, stars that shine above the rest are supporting those that black out in life's ongoing test. They help in finding answers and treatments to assist with informed support and signposting to medics on their list for the trials and tribulations and helplessness of life, of unexplained unconsciousness can knock us out and give such strife. So if you struggle to stay conscious or black out in any way, be sure you are not alone and contact stars today. Clever little link there to the stars, which is, was it that Syncope Trust and Reflex Anoxic Seizures?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, unashamed plug there.
Oh, not an ashamed plug, but done beautifully, I might say. So. Yeah, and so that's one example of how you'll turn out a little bit of prose.
Yes, it can be anything,
prose.
Absolutely anything that just you think, oh yes, I've got a poem on that. And I have to say, I sort of walk around with a tape recorder in my pocket, and if it comes to me, I record it. It goes home and gets whacked onto the laptop, and that's it. Or you might be lying in bed and think, and there's a notepad next to the bed, or wherever.
So this is, in fact, there are a number of poems here which are really lovely, actually. There's some nice ones here. I'm going to do one more. There's much more in a name than we can simply tell that extends beyond mere letters to future destiny as well. For it has been suggested that our name encodes the road ahead for self-fulfilling predictions on the path down which we tread. And if we dig deeper and delve into our minds, there's suggestion somewhere lurking that prospect choices are entwined in nominative determinism Where those things that we prefer grow our penchants and our likings upon the names on which we err. So when naming babies, consider all the clues. What outcomes might well emanate from the names you pick out and choose. For a name is not just letters, but can caress with happiness those lives that angels overlook, and ones we pray will be most blessed. It's lovely, absolutely lovely.
Thank you.
So you've been getting, I would imagine, when you started this, was it a bit tricky to actually come up with the inspiration?
No, when I started it, I had a few poems up my sleeve. And to be honest, it was my mother was saying, you need to do something with these poems because she loves them. She's my number one fan.
Yeah.
And
thank goodness for mums.
And, you kind of think, well, yeah, Mum, but nobody reads poetry, which is a completely wrong idea that I had. It's so not a dead language, and there's a real community out there that absolutely love it, and I couldn't believe it. So I to get her off my back, she'll kill me for saying that, but to get her off my back, I thought, I'll blog them, pop them on a blog, and it's been really popular. It's been seriously popular.
Well,
and
I'm
really
just looking at some of the comments coming in, actually, just as a response to that last poem. I didn't realise until much later that I named my 3 American children 3 very popular British names. I think this says more about me than them. And it goes on. So it must be lovely, actually, to get that kind of direct response. Yes, you do get some feedback, which is really nice, and to connect with people all over the world as well. That lady I know is, I think she writes for the New York Times, and that lady, so that's really interesting connection, and you get an insight into their lives. And I'm studying a psychology degree as well, so I have to say it sort of, tweaks everything for me. So, and it doesn't it's just point to how social media is so where it works fantastically well. Yeah, I agree with you completely. Where it works, it's wonderful, and it's a really, really fantastic tool. Empowering. It is empowering. It is empowering, and it's great. And I think that often doesn't come out, and it is a shame it doesn't come out more, really. You tweet your poems as well, or links to your poems. I do. You're really connected here. I try to be. I'm not so good on Twitter, although I've been on Twitter this morning. So, it's it's just connecting with people. It's also, when you've got a chronic health problem and you're laid up, it gives you a connection to the outside world as well, which is great. And is a good way to just contribute to society when you maybe can't otherwise. So I've mentioned one of the charities, Stars. How is this going to raise? How much are you hoping to raise for your charities? Do you know, I haven't really got an upper limit, and I don't really want to put an expectation on it. It's quite hard to know in the from the blog how much will be raised. There is a Just Giving link on the blog, but the idea really is to put the poems into a book next summer, and then actually obviously sell the book with a few extra poems that aren't on the blog as a teaser. So, and that will obviously generate the it's an interesting website as well, Ginz&Tonic. Do you like your gin and tonic, if you believe me? I know. I thought you might say that. Well, Dad always called me Gins. So that's kind of the gins and tonic, yeah. Okay. Who doesn't like a gins and tonic? Okay, gins and tonic. That's gins with a Z, and yes. Tonic, and tonic.com, ginzandtonic.com, if you want to have a look at these poems. Yes. And follow you on Twitter as well. Yeah, Twitter, Facebook. Yeah. Drop in and find us online. It's a fascinating story, and so pleased that you're getting a response as well. Thank you. From some pretty good, impressive people too. So great to talk to you this morning, Gina. Nice to meet you. All the very best. Thank you very much. This is Ginny Dello from Grantham at 27 minutes to 11.